Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who always grittily says, "It's time to go to work," before he heads out to record this podcast.
Tim Longo. Yeah, Jen hates it.
That's true. A little Michael Keaton Batman there for you, I think. That was
they all did it. Yes, he was infamously the one where all of us at the time were like, "What's he doing? Why is Michael Keaton doing that?" I'm Batman, but I feel like Christian Bale did it as well. And probably,
I mean, they all do the gritty, but he literally says that it's time to go to work.
Oh, does he? Okay,
yeah, that's a direct quote. I don't remember from which movie, but
there's a couple. I think speaking of like callback quotes, I feel like there's been a handful of sort of like ones from the films that everyone would recognize. What was the other one of like, who is that guy? I feel like, or what are you? Or something like that. There's a couple that came from either 89 or some of the others that I think, are great little homages to the films or just to the pop culture-ness of it. Because some of those, memes are memes before memes in a way. Yeah, but Batman final episode.
Final episode talking about the game, sort of between us. I don't think I'm not planning on any bonus games or anything on this. I think that this is close enough to present day that the bonuses are almost direct descendants. Sort of like it's kind of be following. I mean, I guess Gotham. What is it? Gotham Knights is the most.
I would say that's the most recent, direct lineage one. I didn't actually think about it, to be honest, but it would be interesting to think about like a recent release that isn't a Batman game necessarily, but is in the direct lineage of these games. Maybe the Spider-Man games.
Yeah,
too obvious.
The new Spider-Man. There's a Spider-Man 2 coming out here in October. But for it, one would require a PS5, which I do not have. So
yeah. Well, and I have. They might be on PC now, actually. Yeah, I think.
That's true.
Spider-Man ones are on PC. The PlayStation's been better at getting them on Steam lately. But I do want to, not necessarily a full bonus episode, but I did want to do a small segment on Arkham Knight, which I did start playing. So we'll hit that later on before. Well, maybe that would be after takeaways. We'll see, but But we finished. We both finished.
We both finished. We've got several bosses to talk about. Another Scarecrow thing. I guess we should start with Ivy because it's interesting. I mean, we should probably, just talk about all the bosses here because
Croc is before Ivy, but we can do it.
The boss is before Ivy. That's right. Yes, because you need whatever he's got. Some, I don't know, some magical spit or something that you've got to pick up all over the place. That's right. From the roots of the plants or something that are digging into his sewer. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can start with maybe we'll start with the third Scarecrow because that ends with him meeting Croc basically, or right. Something like that. He has Croc. Croc has him anyway.
I was on my way to Croc when we last ended. And I don't remember when the Scarecrow comes in. Exactly, the last Scarecrow one. There's a point when it forces you through. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But we can do the Scarecrow one first.
Yeah, we can. Let's do this.
I think it's fairly short, but
it is there. I mean, it's another variation on the same theme. I think I failed less, so it was less annoying to me from that standpoint. It does have though the really, appropriate, reflection that the Joker and Batman are in fact reflections of one another.
Right.
It's one of the things I loved about I've enjoyed revisiting these games because I'm playing City now. I played Origins, is how they each treat that relationship. Origins was really fun with it. I mean, what the Joker would see when he saw Batman was terrifying. He wasn't even a human form. He was like this demonic presence, all cape and cowl and whatnot. And here
under the fear serum. I don't remember how Joker factored into Origins, to be honest.
Well, he took out Black Mask and was pretending to be Black Mask, to, I don't know, get all the crime under him as the Joker. And then at a certain point, he was going to blow up this hotel. When he failed, he jumped apparently to his death, and Batman jumped out after him and caught up with him and saved him from dying. And that kind of turned him more fully on the crime path that we have today. There's a great scene where he's like talking to Harley about this new relationship and how it really opens your eyes to the world. And Harley thinks, who is still at that point a doctor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or whatever, thinks that he's talking about her.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Batman. it's very, very good.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's some great stuff in that. None of it is Scarecrow related. He's not in it. It's all, there's just a point at which there are points where you're in Joker. You're controlling Joker briefly. And in one of the final, scenes, he's getting beat up by Batman, and you see from his perspective what that looks like. And it's quite terrifying.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool. I think I didn't get to that point. I think the fact that he is Black Mask is probably a spoiler for me, which is fine. I don't mind. But I don't think I got to the point where that was maybe revealed. But that was probably a big reveal, right? Because I remember Black Mask, but I don't remember the reveal of maybe I just don't remember.
It was pretty obvious, and it's pretty early on.
Okay.
Felt like. Well, I mean, it depends. Like in what order you do, all the side content. Right. So there are sort of like, it could be 2 hours in, or it could be 20 hours in if you did a bunch of Riddler stuff or whatever.
That's what
you do a bunch of Penguin stuff first, I guess, and then it's kind of the next thing after that. There's a crime scene investigation where you kind of, if you're paying attention, you definitely will figure out, oh, this is Joker. That's not, whoever this guy is not, that's not Black Mask. There's 2 Black Masks in this scene or whatever. So you kind of cotton onto it at that point. But anyway, playing as the Joker was fun to reverse, and point out that Batman probably also needs some psychological help and maybe could also be sent to Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, I mean the origin. Yeah, so that was early in Joker's career, right?
Origins.
Earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, it was his first appearance in the city.
Okay. In this.
No, but I'm talking about Asylum now. To flip the perspective and replay that opening scene, pointing out that Batman probably could be locked up in this place just as much as any of them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great reversal and a great surprise, I think. Just similar to the Bruce, the young boy Bruce moment, right? I think there are a couple really simple, like it's not as much to do that kind of stuff, to recreate that kind of stuff, but it's very. I think that's not to jump to my takeaways for this game, but that's definitely one of the strengths of the game is its sort of efficiency and how clever they were with making a lot out of a little, and really focusing on the Joker throughout the whole game was so critical. So it's funny because I did start Arkham Knight. It's which we can talk about as well a little bit, but this, I don't know if he has any sort of is any sort of element in Gotham Knights. I don't know if Gotham Knights is actually part of this canon or its own thing or what, but they can't get away from the Joker. And now that you've just told me that about Origins and Black Mask, it's like, and then what they end up doing with Arkham Knight to try to cleverly not have him dead, that friend of mine that I know that worked on the game I mentioned before, talking about with City, how obviously controversial it was to actually kill off the Joker in City.
Right.
And how much debate there was about that. And then how Arkham Knight opens in the very, very, early moments of the game, which I thought, or really, I guess I'd say credits. Very cool and interesting if you remember that.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, so
because me and video game memories.
Yeah, right. You don't care. Well, so
it's just I forget. I just forget as soon as I
no, it doesn't stick. I totally get it. Yeah, you move on to the next thing, and it's somewhat forgettable. I think this is something I'd only remember because I'm a fan, right? Even down the road, even though I just played it, but 10 years from now, I'll probably remember this moment. But it opens with, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it relates to the whole Joker theme, I think, in Arkham, because I guess it's sort of the conclusion or sort of weird full circle because of the hallucinations eventually start in Arkham Knight. So the Joker just never can't get away, right, from the Joker. But it opens with a close up of him, the Joker, on a cremation table or conveyor belt. And it's just his face, and he's obviously dead and pretty beaten up, and it's sort of after City. There's later a voiceover where Batman says, I flicked the switch myself in the cremation chamber and watched him burn. And you actually, it's kind of a little bit like Hitman Blood Money opening, where you're watching the opening sort of cinematic credits and you kind of have some control. Which I don't think we talked about before, but you start moving the sticks around, I think, and you start turning the jets on as a player,
right,
underneath the body, and it's just like it's basically a bust shot. It's just a bust shot from him, right? So it's from his chest up, but you can kind of move the torches around and light them up. I thought it was quite effective, especially if you had remembered City or just played City or kind of remember that what happens there, because to be the one to torch the body. Yeah. But then of course he comes back anyway in the form of a hallucination. And it's just like, well, I can't get rid of this guy now. He's in my mind.
Yeah. No, the Joker stuff is quite good in Arkham Knight, I think, as well. I mean, it's a strength of the series is the Joker, the Batman Joker relationship, even in Origins, I think, as well, establishing it, and it's good stuff. I mean, it's a real strength. And, the Scarecrow scenes also illuminate, some of the deeper fears of being the Batman, like things that we've pointed out, like maybe I am also just as crazy as all these people I put here, Bruce Wayne, or, maybe I deserve to be locked up as well for what I do.
Yeah.
And those sorts of things.
I mean, he's not a hero really, I don't know. I mean, he is, but he isn't, we talked about it before. He's a fatally flawed. It's not like Superman.
Yeah.
Superman is altruistic and just completely pure in a way. Also not of this planet, et cetera, and I guess that's the kind of the great dichotomy of those two characters, as always has been in DC at least. Yeah, I mean, even so, there's a in the beginning of this Scarecrow thing, we don't have to spend too much more time on it, but there's a TV monitor fritzing out moment that's very Eternal Darkness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they replay the opening cinematics of the game where the Batmobile is driving to Arkham, and it's the same shots, it's the same timing, and then when they cut in, I think Joker's driving the car and that's Batman's right. Batman. So yeah. It's all and it's done very abruptly, and you're about to go into a Scarecrow scene, but of course, just like the last one, you don't know what to expect. And it's all fairly seamless, and the sort of thing where if you blink your eye, you're like, what's going on? Because it's so religious to the opening of the game. And I just thought, I just was really appreciative of it.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly done. I mean, it's it probably wasn't even that hard to do, really, right? I mean,
no, that's what I mean about the economical aspect.
Yeah, I mean, you're swapping two characters. There are gonna be some particularities. When you cut to the Joker, you're going to see the Joker a certain way. When you cut to Batman, you see Batman a certain way. But other than that, it's probably, they probably have similar rigs, the same rig, so you end up with rigs are what we call, basically the frame you animate with, and the sort of marionette strings, even though they don't quite work that way. The way that you compose the body, and so they're both about the same size, etc. So I imagine they just swap them, and then customize a few things, particularly with how Batman is writhing, both in the car and strapped in to the gurney. It's pretty, that is, as you say, extremely economical, and that it can be that economical and also surface the sort of things that I was talking about is just, chef's kiss. That is so good.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes those are the best. Those are the most effective ideas and execution of those ideas when you have. We've talked about it ad nauseum as far as what constraints can do, and giving yourself thinking about what you have at your disposal to make effective moments, the tools you're given, kind of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So then my recollection was that Croc is basically next. I don't know if you go straight into Croc. That's kind of how I seem to remember him grabbing Crane.
He does, yeah. You go through intensive care and you go down below and eventually get to those sewers again.
Right.
I don't remember the exact layout of it, but yeah, Crane. You're following Crane after that, and yeah, that's probably why you're right as far as like the order of things, because the Scarecrow thing probably would have happened already, but yeah, and then he's standing on the side of the sewers, and you kind of know what's going to happen at that point.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about it last week because I had played this section was that I really, really liked the Killer Croc section from a lot of different angles. One, I think it's a good balance of difficulty. It's not too difficult. I didn't get through it on the first try, but it wasn't terribly difficult. And even felt like the regularity of the, it's all right angles, the path is wide enough, like you're not going to fall off easily and things like that. I'm always frustrated by, like the God of War,
yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. Their version of this was that those terrible balance beams.
Exactly. It was really, really hard. So it's not specifically, difficult, but it has really good use of music to heighten the drama. You got, kind of, I don't know, psycho strings and stuff like that at times. And,
very haunted house in a lot of ways. Yeah. Because he comes out, he'll grab out of the, you'll hear him and then his arm will come out of the water sometimes, but it's just smoke and mirrors. Like he can't actually grab you, like when you jump over certain areas.
And then you're doing like little 100-meter or so stints to get to the next whatever honeydew, whatever it is that you're gathering these samples. But that's great because it kind of builds like and he's popping out at times and running at you and you got to hit him with the batarang. So they're reusing that. So they're not like putting a lot of new stuff on you. But then you get to the end of having gotten all these samples and it's like, all right, well now you got to come back out. And it's like, now it's 500 meters and you're like, oh God,
yeah.
And it really just like flips on just turns on a dime there. And it's like, oh man, that's a long way. Didn't feel so bad getting out here, but like now it feels really hard to get out. And they actually compress that a little bit by having sections where you run besides, right? So like they actually shorten the time by mechanically forcing you to have to run.
Forcing you to run, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
it's so good.
Discourage that, yeah. And it's modular. Like from a development standpoint, some things I appreciate about it is that it's modular, but it wasn't boring modular. There was a lot of still some variability, and how they play stuff, and of course some of that is the maze-like quality. They established that it's kind of maze-like in the VO before when he talks to Barbara and stuff. A small tidbit that I think is another great example of a team that really knows Batman is when it first begins, he puts the explosive gel on the ground at the beginning. And in a cinematic, and you're like, why is he doing that? And he says something like, I've got this covered. Barbara's like, you sure you want to do this? And then it comes into play later. And that's such a Batman, like, always be prepared kind of thing, because the gate closes at the end and you think you're, and then you blow it up and he falls through the hole. So it's like, those are great little touches. And I mean, to your point on the music, like this, I don't know if this is a inspiration they used in development at all, but I can't imagine it wasn't. That especially at the end when you're forced to run, it's Jaws. I mean, he's Jaws, and and he's a shark, right? And it's really effective in that way. They really took even just the concept of knowing how to execute on the fantasy fulfillment of fighting Killer Croc. They could have very easily, they had it with Bane, they had it with the mutants. To your point, you use the Batarangs in the same way. They could have had another boss battle of a similar kind because they've taught you all that stuff. But they do repeat that quite a bit, even with the Joker at the end. And so the big brutish fight. And so I did love that this was more of a level design boss fight than really a mechanical one where you're actually punching and kicking or whatever.
It also reminds me a little bit of sections from, Resident Evil horror games.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's total Resident Evil. You're totally right. Yeah, there's a few that are very similar to this, actually. Yeah. Where they've put the camera in front of you and you're running at the camera.
Right.
There's a Crocodile. There was something like that? Maybe Crocodile. Anyway.
Yeah.
Inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's those sorts of like moments where you can't see what you're running towards and it's coming up, behind you and you can see the terrible thing, right? That's going to get you if you don't execute. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's a lot of all of those things. So it's a great little diversion, it's sort of a good way to start off spooky season here for us.
I'm curious to know how much they talked about horror as a genre. Of course, they had to be teen, but this has always been an example of a game and a franchise or a sub-franchise that has, rides that line of teen.
Yeah.
But it has a very horror tone to it, even though it's not gory. So I'm sure that was a touchstone for them. Like, how do you make a horror game, not horror?
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and the location plays into that as well. It's all, as we talked about last time, layers and layers of history. It's very gothic, in most places.
Yeah. So one day, that was another point I forgot to mention in pre-show, which we don't have to talk about very much, but it takes place in one night.
Right.
And they reinforce that with his suit as an example, right? Because his suit gets
getting
torn up over time. He doesn't change it. And in fact, I think he also has, which is, I don't know why this would be the case. I was going to say he has stubble over time, or maybe it's just dirt. I don't know. But
I think it's dirt.
But yeah, he's
getting grimy, because
they reinforce these
explosions all over the place and whatever. Yeah. No, it's really good. It's really good. And in fact, I think all of them basically take place in one.
That's what I was going to say, because I think Arkham Knight seems to be doing the same thing, and I'm pretty sure Arkham City did the same.
City is all one night because Hugo Strange has this, 10-hour plan or whatever, 12-hour plan.
Yeah.
So,
and then Arkham Knight takes place during Halloween, which I think is fun, and I did not know, and so of course I started it on the 1st of October. The house is being decorated in Halloween motifs as I was sitting there. So
nice, and pumpkin spice everywhere, I'm sure.
No, we're not as much a pumpkin spice fan, luckily.
Okay.
But there are a lot of pumpkins. They just don't smell.
Okay. Yeah. Pumpkin spice smells nothing like pumpkin.
Right.
And that's the true horror of the fall season.
Pumpkin spice latte is the true horror. Yeah.
Crass commercialism, the true horror of any season. And
but yeah, I think Croc was definitely a highlight and very memorable. And then that leads basically the next big event is the Ivy boss fight, right?
Yeah, which I didn't love. It's
no,
it's fine, but I didn't love it.
It's funny too because it reminded me of that one boss in Metroid Prime, that plant boss.
Yeah, the plant,
or at least inspired by.
Yeah,
the big plant bosses are pretty much they're all over video games. And I also had trouble for some reason. I felt the need to hold the left trigger down before I was using the Batarang instead of just tapping the trigger. And it added this extra step that I kept failing. I had a really hard time with that fight until I realized I don't need to hit both triggers. I can just hit one trigger, and the timing was much easier. But yeah, it was a bit of a throwaway and kind of disappointing too. Oh, but that one, to your point on Resident Evil, for some reason that fight felt very Resident Evil to me as well. Just sort of pattern recognition and sort of like pseudo Nintendo design, but very simple at the same time. So I mean, it was fine, but is there also? I feel like I've fought many Resident Evil bosses that are like in the heart of the creature, and you're shooting the body of them.
Well, the end of 7 is basically very similar big plant monster, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, gigantic, but yeah.
I feel like even the end of 8 had something too.
And there's one in Dark Souls too, right? There's that weird plant boss.
Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls also?
No, Dark Souls also.
Oh, okay.
Right beyond the fire.
Beyond the fire.
You have to fall down.
Oh, yeah. They're like the tree thing, like the roots and stuff.
Yeah,
that was a bad boss.
I didn't love that either. So I don't know. Plant bosses and us. I'm not crazy about it.
Yeah, so many ideas, right? You got to go through through the elements, right? You got the elements, you got plants, you got animals, you got insects. Pretty much that describes, and the ghosts and undead. That's pretty much all the bosses.
Got it covered. You got it covered. That's it. The total taxonomy. You heard it here first, folks. I just kind of was just constantly wailing on the Batarang and, just, dodging around, making sure I didn't get trapped up by the plant growth that she was doing. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's fine. But I think it definitely stood out as one of the weaker ones. But I mean, leading to after that, you're basically you get the full invitation from the Joker. And again, like, I think this game is still very much a masterclass in the ever-present villain. And of course, with the Joker, you have a perfect, the combination of a single location that's, there's easily loudspeakers all over the place or whatever. So you can kind of constantly hear him. That trill, that little jingle that plays before each speaker announcement is just the best. I mean, it's just so good. And it's so much so that I forgot about it. I forgot about it before replaying again. But then once I heard it, it kind of all comes rushing back. And for some reason, I had always associated that particular sound with BioShock as well. I don't think BioShock had anything like that when Ryan would announce, although maybe Ryan was always talking to him. But I just think that being able to have the Joker talk to you anywhere while you're anywhere on the island, through TV or through the loudspeakers, and then having that be the culmination at the end where he's basically saying, there's fireworks going off and
The fireworks get a little old when you're doing all the Riddler stuff at that point.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I didn't do
Just
that.
like, okay, how many fireworks does this guy have? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I didn't do that this time. I didn't do extra stuff, and I did stuff that I found naturally, and I think it was at like 71%. So it's actually not bad for not even trying, you know?
Yeah.
Which feels like the right amount. I feel like you want about 25% to be on the harder side for people who want to be completionists. So I thought that was well balanced. I think overall the difficulty game is fairly well balanced, and I think the difficulty of the optional stuff is appropriate. I think they did a great job at that. I think it's a very accessible game for what it is. But yeah, just seeing the banners, you know, Joker's Asylum, and the way that it's sort of the world, the island evolved over time as he's taken it over more and more. And then the fireworks are just so Joker. But then that sequence going into the building, with, you know, all of the criminals, you know, not fighting you, and the guest list, you know, and yeah, it's very good getting through there. And then he's sitting there with the TV on his head.
Yeah, on his head. Kill your television.
Yeah, a lot of good. I mean, it's good. It's Mark Hamill's performances, you know, just like sells it completely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, entirely works because of him, and Conroy for that matter. All the voice work is quite good. And yeah, I mean the fight in there is, you know, it's kind of they've been escalating the sort of mutant thing. You know, the first time it's one mutant. You know, you're teaching you to dodge and stuff. And then later on you've got Bane, so it's much bigger mutant problem, with some additional enemies maybe. And then later it's 2 mutants, but just the 2 mutants, no extra goons. Now it's 2 mutants and extra goons, right? And so it's like there's a natural progression here. And that was a rather tough battle, though. You know, I don't think it was unfairly tough. It felt okay. I mean, I think I failed it a couple times, 2-3 times. Just not really managing them well. You know, the 2 of them, just the timing on the dodging and stuff. I just was missing. You know, like trying to throw the batarang and then dodge. You know, it's just getting trampled a lot. And depending on where you end up, there might not be a lot of space that they're running through to get to you. So it ends up being pretty rough. So you know, it was just kind of learning to how to use the space well in the combat. And you know, from there you go just to the end of the game with the hulked out Joker. You know,
yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's funny that we keep bringing up BioShock, but you know, you know where I'm going with the end.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's hilarious that is the state that the Joker is in at the end.
Yeah.
And completely over the top, obviously, and very comic booky. But I think the one thing about the Arkham series that my personal taste, you know, in Batman sort of tone, that I never have really liked is just the roided out aspect of this version of Batman. Even Batman himself is too
beefy,
wrestler, too WWF for me. Yeah, and I really prefer the more, you know, the more lean and agile kind of version. And so to see the Joker go to this level is, you know, it wasn't like it's not a letdown or anything. It's just sort of like, it distracts me too much.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then of course, even the boss fight is a little bit silly in that you knock him down and his claws, you know, get stuck
through the floor. Yeah.
Punch him in the face. And I mean, I like that you used the bat claw as part of the boss battle, which was cool. So you're kind of managing the minions while doing stuff like that. So that there's some clever aspects there.
Oh, I just would take them all out and then his back.
Oh no, I did that too. Okay. I'm just saying you have to like find those windows between their spawning.
Yeah, exactly.
waves.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually there's something in there that I remember. There was a couple times where I didn't manage to get to him in time, like I didn't realize there was one guy left or something like that, and he interrupted my pull down.
If you miss, then it starts all over. It's a bummer.
Right, and it also you kind of if you do it, if you pull him down, you get a whole lot of your health back. I think you get less if you don't manage to pull him down, because you get health back in between each group of spawned enemies. Mm-hmm. So it felt a little punishing in that way, like unnecessarily so, like too fiddly, too futzy.
Failure makes it harder rather than helping you.
Yeah, that. But also just it felt too like. I mean, I'm not even sure that's true, but it sort of felt true. Yeah. And it just, so all of that just felt a little fiddly, because it's like, oh, my health never came all the way back. Or I was like, I don't know. It felt too like, just give me all the health. Like, this is the end of the game. Let me finish. Let me finish strong. Let me not fail this fight. How about that? And although I do like that you just go and you punch them the one time, it's that like one big massive punch.
Right. That specifically made me think about your comments that we've always talked about on the podcast of like, just let them have fun making the ending, fairly easy and make them feel powerful. They already have the fights with the minions that you have to pay attention to, but for Joker, it's like, I was kind of worried. I couldn't remember how this battle went, but I was kind of worried that I was in for just like a slog with, punching him a lot in a regular combat sort of sense.
Right.
And making it more binary, I think is. Oh.
Yeah, no, that part of it I think is quite good and strong, and makes you feel like he's really, he's had enough too. Batman's like, I'm done with this. We're done.
Yeah.
You're going back into your cell, roided out or not.
There's a nice touch though in that arena. If you turn detective mode on, there's actually, I don't know, I guess they're the bombs or something that he's going to. There's something below the floor. It's a nice touch from a consistency standpoint and like I guess a little bit of lore or kind of storytelling standpoint, but it actually confused me as well because I thought that they were important for the boss fight. There's 4 of them below the wooden floor, and I couldn't remember how it went, so I thought I was going to need to like have him crash through and destroy those things or something.
Right.
But it's interesting that they spent the time on something like that.
Yeah. Well, they tend to. I don't think I did put detective mode on.
They're very bright. You'd see them.
Yeah, I don't remember them, so I have to assume that I didn't. That I just focused on the fighting, and didn't turn on detective mode. At that point, I was trying to mix in more of the other, gadgets and things like that. Having played later games, it's kind of was easy to try to remember to do more of them, and there aren't so many that it feels overwhelming. So I was trying to spray down some, gel or, throw out a batarang or, whatever, grapple a guy, because you have all the upgrades and stuff at that point as well. So you do feel maximum Batman as well, I guess, if you want to.
Maximum Batman.
That's right.
I mean, this series is definitely maximum Batman.
Yeah.
As I'll talk about with Arkham City or Arkham Knight.
Yeah, do you want to actually talk about those now?
We can do it. Well, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine, and then we can go to takeaways.
Yeah. Do you want to hit City first, or is there anything to talk about there?
No, I don't think. The only thing I wanted to say, and somebody mentioned this on the Discord, I can't remember, it might have been Belmont or Lost Lake, that there's that is not as big as I remembered. I was definitely, my recollections were very colored by Origins, because I was making assumptions as a developer, like, well, why wouldn't you just take the same city and tell a different story in it? But that's not what they did. They did a whole new city, and based on when they came out, I guess they must have been in development in parallel quite quite a bit of the time. So I guess it wouldn't have made any sense. But it's another way to go. Because I think we should do more of that, honestly. Reuse things and find ways, sort of like they did with Majora's Mask. Take a lot of the same stuff that you have and just remix it. But so it is a little tighter than I remembered. There is definitely that sense of sort of engaging with separate quest lines, as much as you want, or as little as you want, and them just being separate. They're just, there's a thing with Zaz, there's a thing with Calendar Man, there's a thing with Bane. You're doing something for Bane. So it's just all of that stuff.
You can just do beginning, middle, and end of them and finish them, right?
Yes, I think you could do a bunch of Zaz stuff if you wanted, or a bunch of it's just kind of ambient overlay. It's another overlay on the world. It's phone booths and of course there's a billion riddles. There's some stuff that's happening sort of below the city as well. So you're kind of going into separate levels for different environments, which is nice.
Which was the one that had, was it a Deathstroke thing where there was like a optional ballistics content where you go to certain places in the open world and you have to angle, you have to figure out who shot.
Yes. Yeah. That's just a crime scene analysis. That's it's not Deathstroke. It's the other one, Deadshot.
Deadshot, right?
He's actually in both of them. Although he's very briefly in Origins. I felt like something that was cut. You trace back bullets or trace back, and then there's shell casings or whatever, and you start analyzing. And I don't know if that's going to be a bigger thing. In this case, it was some political prisoner, they call them, which is another quest line, basically. There's just a lot of sort of layers of quest lines that kind of take you all over the city, as well as the main story. So I don't know how much of it I'll do. I do like being able to play as Catwoman at times as well, in her own kind of storylines.
I remember playing the DLC. They had a whole campaign.
Yeah, they have a whole thing for that, and that's that I think is actually quite strong. It's just nice to have a similar set of skills, but just a different viewpoint. Like she can hang from all the different grates and things like that are all over the place. She has some of her own Riddler trophies, so at some point you'd have to go and play just as her and go around and do all the Riddler stuff. So that's cool. There's kind of stuff that she can do that he can't do, and vice versa. Because he can do the electric batarangs and things like that. So it's fun. It is. I probably won't play all the way through it. I'm getting a little Batmaned out at this point. But Batman out. But it's fun. It's nice to see the evolution of this team. As you were gonna say, because you're going straight to the end.
Yeah, I mean, it was I remember playing a lot of, I don't know, I had a lot of, probably over 100 hours in City, so I might be have a hard time going back to that one, but maybe someday. But Arkham Knight, as I said, I hadn't played it all, so I jumped to that one. I already owned it, so I figured it was easy enough to load up, and I'm probably 3 or so hours in. And it's just interesting to see. I don't remember how City dealt with this, but there's a basic assumption that I feel like there's a basic assumption that you've played the previous games, or that you have an understanding of the franchise, in a fundamental way. You have the sort of baseline gadgets of everything kind of right off the bat, right?
Yep, so to speak.
As far as batarangs, and I think you might even have the remote batarang right away. You have the gel, you have the bat claw, and all that kind of stuff. So I assume the upgrade, in fact, I got one of the suit upgrades, which was the most glorious and overwrought upgrade scene I've ever seen, when you to get some armor.
It shoots down out of the sky or something.
Yeah, well, they have a great mechanism that they continue, where the bat Batwing comes in and gives you, seems like gives you most of the time, gives you your big upgrades. And so the Batwing comes, drops this suit, and you get this new like super armored suit. But they just go through so many steps to show you everything that to love about this suit. And of course, the camera shots are like, tracking across the surface, and they're like, and there's this thing, and then there's this thing. But my main sort of macro point about the game so far is, I mean, I like it a lot, and it is the logical evolution of this series. Absolutely. Like, you just play Arkham Asylum and then to play Arkham Knight, you're like, they know what the F they're doing. Like, they know how to make a Batman game.
Yeah.
It is so polished. Like, it is as a developer, it is intimidating how polished that game is.
Yeah.
Like, it is just at another level, like really impressive. Every little bit, like just really high quality. But at the same time, it's also, the game of too many yeses. Like, they said yes to too many things. Like, there's a bunch of new mechanics. I'm only a few hours in, and there's this whole like fear mechanic thing with melee combat and sneaking up on people. There's, all these new gadgets. There's the Batmobile. It's like pile upon pile.
It's the car, right? Chicks dig the car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about this one though. I don't know if they're going to dig this car, because it is, I don't know.
Definitely Nolan influenced car.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but I just mean mechanically, like it's a stretch. I think it's kind of really forced into the game. And, I mean, when I'm failing multiple times to do a Batmobile traversal section that is mandatory, that I I keep falling off of buildings in my Batmobile, that I'm driving on top of these buildings.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening? So it's an amazing game so far, and I'm really impressed with where they took the series. But there's also, because we played Arkham Asylum back to back, I really appreciate how economical and focused, spoiler to one of my takeaways, how focused Arkham Asylum is. I think it is ultimately a better game for it. And we all have been, as developers, we've all been in that place of sequels where you're like, well, we have to kind of outdo ourselves in the next game. And they did that with City for sure. And then they get to Night and they're like, well, we have to outdo ourselves, and so you just kind of keep adding. And I think as a new player coming into Arkham Knight, I really wonder, I don't know who that would be. I'm sure somebody only played that game, but it is an overwhelming game. Like, there is a lot. And you can tell because of the way they map the controller. Like, every button obviously has something to do, and some of the buttons have multiple things they have to do. Like, especially the D-pad where you're pressing and holding, and then your radial menus, and I can't remember which. It's just a lot, When you start running out of ways to give the player input to get to your next menu that you have to fool around with,
yeah,
it's like you gotta rethink your scope,
yeah,
or something. Like it's really impressive how much they did in that game, and the game looks beautiful, and the whole Scarecrow thing is cool, and the Arkham Knight thing is cool, which I think I already know who it is, but I'll see. There's a lot of cool aspects to it. The Batmobile I'm still pretty skeptical of, but other than just driving through the city really fast, it's just sort of like, why do you need this? But
there are also battle sections with the car.
Yeah, and I did some of those. Yeah,
okay,
there's like little arenas. Yeah, and it's really fluid. Like the whole like turn into battle mode where you're strafing and you're basically circle strafing as a car.
Yeah,
I mean, it's super neat and it's really well done. I don't know. I find it a little bit weird.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a big game. It's a long game. I don't know how many hours I spent on it, but it was not a small number. But I think I streamed all of that as well.
I mean, I'm definitely going to keep playing. I mean, it's like I said, I think it's a very, very good game. I'm not saying otherwise. It's just interesting to see the alpha and the omega, where you're like, this is humble beginnings, like didn't realize how much of a classic they had. And then they're like, we're gonna do it all,
yeah.
you know, and sort of I think maybe I'm looking at it very much through a developer's lens, which isn't fair, because when somebody buys this game for $60, they're going to be obviously impressed with it because it's just so impressive and so big and so much.
Yeah.
But I think from my perspective, I'm just looking at it from the lens of, editing.
Yeah. I mean, it parallels, what's been happening across the industry with every game becoming kind of the same.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's a great point, because it does feel it is one of those open world games.
Yeah. Exactly my point. It's like, gain territory. Once you gain the territory, learn all the things in it that you got to do, and just that kind of. Spatial domination games, but where it's like, and there's a million check marks on the map, which, as I've said before, not a thing I necessarily hate. But, I find them quite calming.
Yeah, you're a master at those. Yeah.
Just go do those things, right? Just go do the list of things. And so I don't really have a problem with it, but I don't love the sameness. It's kind of like all games have kind of gone in that direction, and I want some more big weird swings. So I don't know. Maybe that's Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm playing that multiple times at once right now, and it is that is very much a Larian game if you play the Divinity, original Sin games, and so it is a very, I don't know, I don't want to say traditional RPG, but it is just a really well polished RPG of that kind. I think what that game is. It's just a really well done version. But to your point on some bigger swings, what is the next Batman game? What is it going like? Gotham Knights took a different, a 90-degree turn around a corner to kind of subvert that question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's actually kind of an interesting maneuver, if it is in the Arkham space, or even if it isn't. It's an interesting maneuver for people who like these games, because it's like, okay, well, don't worry about Batman. Play these other characters, which are pretty good characters in and of themselves. Oh, and by the way, you can play co-op or whatever, and it's like all 4 of them, 4 for the price of 1. But what do you do with Batman next after that? I'm really interested to see, not even just Arkham, but
you do Batman the Telltale series.
Which is another. I still want to play that, and that's definitely a great example of a different direction, which I can appreciate for sure. But especially with the Spider-Man games out there now, and the Wolverine game coming, Black Panther's coming. There's lots of people now in the Arkham Knight space. I think Arkham Knight being the sort of pinnacle. And so I don't know. I wonder what they're doing. Obviously we have no idea, but I'm really interested to know.
Well, they're doing the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, not Rocksteady specifically, but I just mean Warner Brothers. What is the Batman plan from here on out? Because Rocksteady is clearly doing something else, and I guess you have WB Montreal who did the Gotham Knights, so maybe they're doing the next Batman game. But maybe you don't need a Batman game. I just all I'm saying is I agree with you. I want to see a swing in a new direction.
Yeah.
And I just am intrigued to know what that's going to be.
Yeah, it's hard to know. You've got such a player expectation now, though. Like the audience, they want, presumably the Arkham Knights and
where.
What's that?
I'm well aware of the player expectation.
Past,
and I'm with you. I agree. That they have set the gold standard, for that, and it is that challenge, because people will want. There's plenty of people that want a 4th Arkham game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or I guess technically 5th if you count Origins.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I don't know if I need that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know the character well enough. They were so focused on the Joker for their trilogy. I just don't. I mean, but he is. You got to be right. If you're going to be swinging this big, you might as well go. All the way in on the character. I mean, you can look to the films and see how they've changed over time as well, right? I mean, this is definitely a Nolan, closer to a Nolan Batman in some ways, in terms of sort of tone.
Yeah.
You could try to take it in a different direction, with the newer one, the one with what's his name, Pattinson.
Yeah.
So you definitely would have at least a different aesthetic, but I don't know that you would do substantially different game, as a result. Also that movie's really, really dark, like visually.
Yeah, it's
super dark.
It's hard to watch.
It's hard to watch. It's long. Oh my god, felt like I was.
I should rewatch that. Actually, I saw it in the theater, but the theater I saw it in wasn't great, so even the lighting wasn't perfect.
Oh yeah, no, I mean,
I mean, the other place to look for the comic fans out there is actually the comics themselves, because they have to keep things fresh month by month,
yeah,
and always have. And so Court of the Owls, which I think actually might be in Gotham Knights as a antagonistic group
organization,
yeah. But they've started, every kind of major creator that's dabbled with Batman has tried to do some they're constantly trying things out, and some of them stick and some of them don't.
I think it's clear. It has to go back to basics. Batman 66, the video game.
I don't think that's a bad idea. There were rumors actually at one point that Rocksteady was doing that. I don't know where they came from. That's not from
wishful thinking.
It's probably a manufactured rumor.
Yeah, somebody out there was like, maybe if we dream it, it will become true.
But it's super clever. I mean, it would be super clever to do it that way, and you could still have it be a quote unquote Arkham game, but just in a completely different tone. And the other direction that I always go, which I thought Origins was going to be more of, but in retrospect, it makes sense that it wouldn't. I would love to see his journey to that point. You know what I mean? Because he supposedly goes around the world in trains, and they dabbled with it a little bit in Batman Begins in the film,
right?
Where he's out of the country and all of that stuff. But sort of like
fighting Liam Neeson, like Highlander.
Yeah, like the real origin, like the real, like how he really became. Rather than he's already that.
Right.
Origins, my memory of Origins and the one that you played is more that he is who he is, but he's just starting now.
He's just starting as Batman, and he's not, he hasn't built a relationship. What the game's really about is him building the relationships, the sort of team that surrounds him, Gordon and Alfred and Barbara, who's still Barbara at that point, is not. What does she become? Batgirl. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Well, let's turn to takeaways. We're here in an hour. We're not going to get to email, so we'll just try to do takeaways quickly. I think we'll have a fair amount of overlap. At the end of the series, we like to talk about some things that we take away. If we were that. Were something we would think about, I guess, if we're building a game in this vein, or even just something we might take to our work every day. Why don't you go ahead and start, sir, as is the custom?
Excuse me. Yes. The obvious one that I think will probably be definitely crossover for both of us, I would bet, is the we talked about it in the first episode, even the how effective they were at bringing the IP to video games. And
the Batman of it all is how I put it.
I just my takeaway is literally just Batman ! That's all I put, and all that really means is what you just said. It's just there was a deep history with a few exceptions, couple exceptions, really only two, I think, where there just wasn't Batman content in the video game space that was worth anything for a long time. And similar, I think I might have given this analogy, but for myself, like similar to the Lord of the Rings movies, where you're like, there's no way that they could ever do this, and then to be so surprised that they did. This game, again, it's just sometimes when the stars align and you're as much some of it is as much the quality of how they executed on it as the surprise that you have about quality. It's like, I'm so surprised that it's so good as far as Batman goes that counts for a big percentage of my, how impressed I am with the game. So
it absolutely permeates it. I mean, Batman is in everything, and there's very few things that we look at and say, the maps of secrets, I think, are the one thing that I look at and go, well, that's not very Batman, they didn't quite figure out what that should be, and then they iterate, and then in the next game it's like, oh no, you got to find some Riddler goons, and beat them up, and they'll tell you where the things are, and so it's like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense. That's a natural evolution. That makes a lot of sense. It wouldn't have fit on the island, but
very clever for City.
It's a good iteration to find that, to figure out a way. You can definitely see that as like, we didn't really nail the Riddler stuff, like how you found them all. What could we do there? You can definitely see that evolution. But I mean, the Batman of it all was my and even the things that I didn't love, like the detective vision, I understand it, and actually it flows into one of my other strengths, which is I'll just go and then we'll trade back and forth, I guess, but allowing for that distance between the player and the character, trying to, as you put it, like, it's a game. Let it be a game. Put in your RPG elements because people like them, progression elements, or whatever you want to call them. Allow for this, like this map with all the little question marks floating around on it, and allow for that distance between the player and the character to give some stuff just to the player that's that fits with what they want just out of games and their experiences with games. I think that's really important, and something I hadn't thought about a lot in the past. And I think as an industry we've gotten pretty, I mean, there are things like progression mechanics everywhere, and that it's people like them and whatever, and they're just kind of accepted as part of games now. But I also think there's often a seriousness to it that this doesn't quite have, even though it's a serious game. They're leaving some room in there to just like, we can just put that in because it's a game,
don't worry about it.
Don't sweat it. And you don't have to justify it 6 ways from Sunday. You just put it in. So,
I mean, to the degree where Arkham Knight, if it is the pinnacle, at the end of each combat, there's a little scorecard that comes up.
Yeah, they do that in Origins as well.
That says, all your stats and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's like,
it's a little bit in City.
Is it?
But in City, it's mostly just like the multipliers in Y and stuff like that. It's kind of like, if you look, it's like passing through like, okay, you get 4x this because whatever, which they also do in Asylum a little bit.
Yeah, but this is like they break. Yeah,
this is like,
it's like a little spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's like the back of a baseball card.
Yeah, sure. I don't know what that is, but sure. Now, if you're talking about Star Wars cards, then sure.
Okay, so here we go.
G.I. Joe cards, sure. Anyway, no, but I think those 2 points go together well. Like, as an example of the distance between the player and the IP or what have you, I think the Riddler is a great example of that, because they found a way to make collectibles very Batman.
Yeah.
And they root them in a character that really makes sense for him to not really care about what the Joker's up to, not really care about anything else. He's a selfish character, egomaniac, etc., etc. And of course, makes no sense that he would hide this stuff all over the island. You don't really care. They're just collectibles. But it makes them so much cooler because when you pick them up, you pick up a collectible, he says something to you, and you just get this sense that it's just a very like it's a great way to infuse a really fairly important character in the Batman canon into this very gamey aspect of the game. I mean, it's very clever.
Yeah, and the same with the tapes, right? And by by framing them as conversations between Arkham psychologists, counselors,
Arkham
whatever.
In general, they do a lot. They return to that various times. The history of the island as well.
Right. Yeah, with the voice of Arkham or whatever.
Yeah.
Spirit of Arkham, I guess. I went and did all of that again too.
Yeah.
And of course I was surprised because I forgot. So,
Oh, I don't remember. You're saying as far as
who it is. It's Sharp.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
You have to go to where his last location was to get the last one. Because he like drew the last symbol on the floor in the where you leave him.
Clever. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, I did. I had forgotten that. Yeah. Because he's like in that prison area.
Yeah.
So my next one is sort of related to what you were just saying there, because you mentioned RPG elements, but the way I put it down was sort of true genre hybridization, which is a little bit too designery of a sentence, but a statement. But the era that this game came out, even though it's not that long ago, it definitely was in the space of you're starting to really blur the lines in genres. Like we constantly have this challenge in the medium where, and it's in film, it's in books, it's everywhere, right? Where it's like, what genre is a thing? And based on that answer, you put it into certain categories and buckets. You even base your finances on those genres because you do comp analysis, and there's all these sort of things that come, this baggage, both good and bad baggage that comes with that. But this era, and I think Assassin's Creed is another good example where things start being blended quite, in a quite sort of gray manner. And we talked about it before, sort of like, why would Batman have RPG elements? But also, who cares? Because people like it. Why would there be collectibles that are abstract? Who cares? Because people like it. And I just remember, my assumptions going into a Batman game is that it would be very focused around obviously Batman and about how badass he already is, and there would not be all of these other sort of minor aspects of other genres creeping in. But I don't know if this is the case, but I feel like this game was made by people who love games. Like there's some Metroid in here. We talked about, I think it is, whether intentional or not, it's very clever to have most of the Metroidvania light stuff in here associated with the collectibles and optional content. You can just play through, like this playthrough that I did for the podcast was I just kind of stuck to the main path for the most part. So it was very lock and key in that way. But if I had gone off and done what you did, I am using some of those Metroid keys to unlock other doors that I had seen earlier. Right. But it's optional. So that's like a clever, like mass market way to deal with that, I'd say. And maybe actually, now I think about it, one of the reasons that Metroid doesn't ever become mass market is because it's so gribbly in that way.
Yeah. Well, and they've in the most recent installments, they've stuck with difficult, right?
Yeah, they've leaned into that. Yeah. Right. Especially, it sounds like Dread, which I still haven't started, but I just, this is a video game. It's a video game, and I like it for it. It's unapologetically mushing genres together in a good way. And it kind of, for me, at least for whatever reason, because we were working on Tomb Raider at the time, which we did a lot of the same hybridization elements, I don't want to say anybody needed permission to do it, but this game I feel like was like, no, it's okay. Just do it. Just put XP in there, just upgrade stuff. Who cares?
Yep.
What's your next one?
My last one, because I kind of paired with Batman for you, is the Free Flow combat.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't have that one down, but you're right to have it.
Yeah, I mean and really because of what I think you had said in the episode about it, which is like every department had to support that. Like it is not everybody had to work together to nail that, and they really nailed it.
Changed everything really.
Yeah, it really does. Really
for this
did.
genre,
just perfect. Feels so good, and lets you maintain that distance between player and character. It's not like a fighting game, where you've got to know a billion combos, right, to be Batman, right? That would be kind of like the other direction you could imagine taking something like this, is like you've got to know the 26 button combos or whatever, to actually do the Batman stuff. And instead of doing that, which would cut off a segment of the market who just wouldn't be able to do it, you just go like, no, he's Batman. You just got to kind of guide him. You got to point the perfect weapon at the enemies, and he'll do his thing. He will use Krav Maga or Aikido or Judo or whatever he needs to use in the moment.
Which is very Batman, right?
Yeah, just switch. I'll do a spring over my hands, so I can kick somebody in the chest. And as we talked about, they're just literally everybody had to work together to make that work, and the systems design balancing of like having how many people are going to be coming at you at any one moment. And I mean, just the audio of how all that sounds and lands, and the animation, really stretching belief, the technical aspects that we talked about with respect to putting lots of characters on the screen at a greater distance. I mean, there's just so many good choices to make that feel so good. And it's it's a signature, so I couldn't let it go by.
Yeah, and that's a really important takeaway that I forgot. There's some fights early in Arkham Knight that are just hilarious because there's so many enemies.
Yeah,
and you're just bouncing off the walls, and it's just like, how is this possible? But I'm barely getting hit, but it just feels so, I mean, it's they really, and then there's even more options, of course, right? And by that point, so it's definitely a natural progression. I don't, hopefully we'll get some guests on to talk about this, and we'll see where that goes. But anecdotally, I've always heard that, which is, we talk about in the podcast a lot, and I don't really have any real insider information on this, but I know that, of course, they didn't hit this right off the bat, right?
No. In
many
fact,
iterations.
I have insider information that they did not, that they had a rhythm-based combat system.
Yeah, they tried a bunch of things, and I know that IDOS was also involved with guiding and stuff, and so that it was definitely a group effort. But some of the anecdotes I've heard were very different from what we got.
The card game, no.
Well, let's just say the analogy that I heard was Fight Night.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very different.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I don't know if that's true or not, or if that's appropriate, but yeah. So, but that's the case with things like this. Like they always go through iteration, and you always have some failures in there before you find when you're coming up with something fairly new,
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's hard to find.
My last one, and I have a fourth one, sort of like dangling one, but we've talked about it plenty. So this is my last one. Is really, we talked about some of this earlier in this episode. Is just as a takeaway from a development standpoint, the focus of the game, whether that be through constraints or being scrappy. We talked about team size. We talked about 21 months, I think, is what is out there on the wiki or whatever. Constraints. We talk about the Star Wars analogy, or the prequels, you could say, versus the original classic trilogy versus the prequels, and how important constraints are. But especially because I started playing Arkham Knight, which again, by all accounts is a really good game, and I'm going to play it, and I hope to finish it. Playing them back to back, though, I really appreciate the focus of Arkham City. You know, I'm on record loving games like Ultima Underworld and things like that, right? Which are very focused experiences, you know, around a single location, and all this. Prey, I think is another good example of that.
Sure.
The new Prey. And so definitely my biases are in that direction already. But yeah, I just, having played this game again, I'm really happy that we got to, because I just, you know, forgot how focused it really is. But it's still, it's like, it's the right length for me. It's the package is good. Like everything I would want in the package is pretty much there. I miss some of the other villains, which they start bringing in the other games, of course. But I think you don't want to do too much in this one anyway, you know. So yeah, that focus is just, I think there's a really good lesson for anybody, especially when you have the constraints.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You said you had a fourth dangling one. You want to dangle it out there?
Well, it relates to the first one, and it really is just not, which we talked about maybe being a Warner Brothers initiative more than anything, but not being afraid to take a fresh take on things, you know.
Sure.
Because going in, like for me, my touchstone coming in was the Arkham Asylum graphic novel, which is very different, even tonally, but you know, the fact that they redesigned every single character, right? Like these very famous characters that I'm pretty used to, and every creative team in Batman, even in the comics, tends to redesign to some degree, but they're always within a boundary. But even though it's not my favorite version of Batman, I really applaud them finding their art direction, finding their thrust and sticking to it, and then just kind of going to the hilt with it. You know, I can always appreciate that focus as well. Another version of the focus where they got it down, they know. And then once you design a new character within that space, the rules are pretty clear about how you go after it, right? The Scarecrow design, I think, is a great example where, you know, we both commented on how interesting that character design is when you have usually just somebody in burlap sacks, you know,
right.
And how far they went with that, which I will say that I think the new Batman film, you know, I think the Batman franchises in many places was influenced by the art direction of these games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Warner Brothers would ever admit to it, but I think specifically in Harley Quinn's case, you know, like this was definitely a fork in the road. They influenced a lot more than people give them credit for, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Well, it's time to pack ourselves away from the asylum, I guess. I'm not really sure what the equivalent... Is it time to get released from the asylum? Maybe that's
We're leaving. We're going into the city.
We're heading back to the city. So if you have thoughts about that, go ahead and shoot us an email. We didn't get to them tonight. We'll catch up soon. We have a couple.
I think I see one here from the Riddler.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
True?
we will get to that. We'll get to that next time. It's very entertaining. At devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter at devgameclub. And yep, I'm hardly ever there, but you know. Or you can find Tim twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. JR at the end.
He's laughing like he's the Riddler again. We also have a Discord. The link will be in the show notes. It's a fun group. We are more than one Generation 1 Pokedex of people now. So that's good. And growing all the time. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. And our logo, that Discord, our merch store, are by Mark Garcia. Have fun retiring to your Bat Caves this week. And good night.
Good night.